I started the session with, I have 3 $100 bills here. If you're paying close enough attention, you may have a chance and a shot at winning one of these bills. And everyone was so engaged in my session because of how I kicked it off.
Our guest today is Stuart Draper, the founder and CEO of Stukent, a leader in digital marketing education. Today, he helps educate over 100,000 students worldwide through real-world marketing simulations.
When they called me up onto stage, I actually came from the back of the room, going around all the round tables, and I rode the hoverboard up on stage. And you know what? Everyone was like, is this guy selling hoverboards? What's going on? But I had everyone's undivided attention. I believe that what Under Armour did to Nike and Adidas didn't kill them, but it took market share. I believe Stukent can do that to Pearson and McGraw-Hill, the 2 largest publishers in higher education. And that story became a story that I shared. And you know what the response was from the audience? The audience erupted in cheers. If you're listening to a good story, you can't tell you're being sold to. If you are afraid of telling stories or afraid of selling, then just tell stories. Well, I have a few things that shaped me into the speaker that I am today.
Welcome back to Beyond the Keynote. I am so excited today, and you should be very excited because we're speaking to Stuart Draper. Stuart has done so many things. He's a founder. He's the host of Startups with Stu podcast. He is a serial entrepreneur, an angel investor, and of course, a keynote speaker. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Carmen. I'm excited to do this and get to know you better as well.
I'm excited to dive in. I think we've got so much to talk about, and we've only got about an hour to do it. So I think we're going to run out of time, but we'll do our best to share as much as we can with our audience today. So let's start at the beginning. I'd love to know about you growing up. I'm always intrigued because people see speakers and think, oh, they're so confident and they're so great up there. And I'm always intrigued because some people, yes, they loved speaking in front of others from when they were a child. It was just natural. And a lot of other people I speak to were actually quite shy and it wasn't what they thought they would be doing. So tell us about you growing up.
Yeah, well, I have a few things that shaped me into the speaker that I am today that stand out. Number one, I was the shy one. As a young boy, my brother and I would do a lemonade stand, and we had it kind of by some bushes. And if I saw that a car was going to park and stop in front to buy lemonade, I was jumping behind the bush and whispering or yelling out in a whisper tone to my brother what to say to sell the lemonade when we were little.
Oh, that's so cute.
He was always the more outgoing one, and or selling chocolate bars to raise money for baseball. My brother would be the one to go to the door, and I would stand back and just walk with him because I was too nervous. But as I got older, my mom encouraged me to get involved in student government in the school. Mm-hmm. And that required a public speaking engagement. And so whether I liked it or not, if I wanted to do student government, I had to get in front of everybody. And that scared me to death. But my mom helped me prepare a speech. My name's Stuart, so people called me Stu. And she came up with this brilliant idea, thanks, Mom, for creating the perfect recipe of stew as president of the school.
I love it. Do you remember the recipe?
And I do not remember the recipe except one key ingredient that I forgot on stage in the moment in front of everyone. I said, the carrots are for, they represent a colorful and fun personality. And then I said, and the potatoes, and I just froze. I drew a blank and I said, well, they represent potatoes. And I threw them in and I went on to the next part. And everyone laughed. And I remember at first being like, no way I win. This was the end. I have failed. And then I won. I think I became more memorable because I made everyone laugh.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when I won, I went from, hey, people are okay with my mistake, and people accept me despite my mistakes. so it's okay that I messed up. Yes. And that helped me build so much confidence going through that. I'm grateful to a mom who pushed me and encouraged me to do hard things and run for office. So those are a couple of quick examples that come to mind when it comes to what shaped me into a public speaker.
I love that story. And it's so true. If you show your humanness, I don't know if that's actually a word, on stage, then the audience often loves that. They fall in love with you, and they obviously voted you in for the role that you were going for, which is amazing. All right. And it's I love that your mum also pushed you into doing that. It was my mum that enrolled me in calisthenics when I was little, and I was really, really shy as a child. But for some reason, I got up on stage at concert time and absolutely loved being up there and surprised everybody. So similar from that point of view.
Oh, that's excellent. I love to hear stories like that. And I love my mom. I'm definitely a mama's boy and grateful for all she did for me.
Beautiful.
And I would add one other stage where my mom helped me in forming me into the public speaker I am today. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're often called Mormon. And that's like a nickname for our church. And because it's a long name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's true. But as a part of our faith on worship on Sundays, after the first partaking of the bread and the water in remembrance of Jesus. After that, different members of the congregation have times when they're assigned or asked to speak in church. And they usually include 2 youth speakers and 2 adult speakers with a song, like a break song, hymn in the middle that they sing. Well, as a 12-year-old, I got asked to speak, and I said yes because I didn't know I could say no. And when it was my turn to speak, I told my mom about it, and she was coaching me up, and she goes, Stu, everyone that reads their talk in church, I just fall asleep to those ones. But when people share what's in their heart, looking at me in the congregation, then that touches my heart more. And she said, so you should try to memorize or remember the outline, the main things you want to talk about. Like, for example, if there's a story from your life about baseball, then you don't write the whole baseball story. You just write baseball story, and that's your note for that section. And so I learned at a young age how to deliver an address to an audience and how to overcome the fear of standing in front of the audience. And to not look as afraid as I really was inside to the audience, So really blessed that way. My mom, again, and my dad as well, I got to watch both of them take turns receiving the assignment to speak and hearing them talk. That also impacted my life for sure.
That is incredible. What great advice from your mum. And she didn't say, you need to stand up and you need to look at the audience and you shouldn't read notes. She worded it in a way that made it just sound like a really great choice to do it that way. So really good coaching from your mum. And love that she said, you just need this little prompt and then you can tell the story from your heart and it's going to come out beautifully. So good. The other thing I love is, and I think we need to do this now. I have 2 boys and they both in primary school, one's still in primary school actually, did a little speech to get a leadership role within the school. And whether they got the role or not didn't really matter. I was just so glad they were having to make the speech because they had to think about what they wanted to write. They had to practice. And then, of course, we had to try and practice with them without needing to hold on to a piece of paper so that they came across really well. And it's such a great skill set to have for life, whether you're becoming a speaker or not in business. You need to speak if you want to be in leadership. So what an amazing skill. Now, I'm interested to know because there was the lemonade stand and the selling of chocolates, I think, for baseball. Mm-hmm. You've become an entrepreneur as well. Tell us a bit, when your parents or other adults used to say to little Stu, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you remember what you used to say?
Yeah, I used to say that I wanted to either be a businessman like my dad, or I wanted to be a fireman or a pilot. Those were like the three
Right.
that, like, depending on who asked and what time of day and how I felt, I usually said pilot, fireman, or businessman. Those were the three.
So you chose businessman in the end.
Yes.
Tell us about how you got there.
Well, I realized that I probably wasn't cut out for the fireman life.
Okay.
And then I learned more about like how much time pilots are away from home. And I knew that I didn't want to be away from home a lot. My dad had a lot of business travel. And I was like, businessmen travel a lot. If pilots travel more, then that's definitely too much. I won't like that. And so the idea of becoming my own boss became the next really exciting idea that stuck for me. And a part of that was watching my dad as a boss versus my brother-in-law as a boss. This is kind of a rich dad, poor dad example, if you've read the book.
I have,
although
yeah.
I would say my dad is very rich, especially as it relates to true success and wealth in life, which I think is more tied to family and love and support than it is to money. But my dad in his 40s became the CEO of a privately held trucking company that had 600 employees. He wasn't the owner of the business. He had a small percentage of equity in a business that was big and growing, but struggling. On the other hand, the business owned my dad, and he had to work very hard, lots of hours, lots of travel. On the other hand, my brother-in-law had a plumbing company, and he worked, 7 to 3. And then if he wanted to come home at 2 one day, he could. If he wanted to work late and stay till 5, which is late, right? And then he could do that. But he called the shots. It was his business. What job site he would show up to on which day was his call. And I loved that freedom that my brother-in-law had. And by the way, I got to work with him in the summers. It was a great job for me. I learned a lot from that. But watching my dad's style of business leadership versus my brother-in-law's style of business ownership were very different. And that motivated me and made me want to become my own boss and start my own business someday.
Yeah. Well, and so good you were able to sit back and observe both of those role models in your life. I've experienced both myself too, because I worked in corporate for over 18 years and ended up in senior leadership roles, and that required, I remember when I had my kids even just doing crazy hours and dropping kids off at childcare at 6 o'clock in the morning and not getting back to them till 6 o'clock at night. And it was a lot. And then when I started my own business, it actually took a long time for me to realize that I didn't have to do those hours, that I could be more flexible, because I was so used to, driving and being in the city and being there all day and working and then coming home late. Now I've been running my business for 8 years. I'm a lot more flexible, and it doesn't mean you don't put the hours in. It just means you can be creative in how you put the hours in, and you can spend more time with your family and children and do life better, I think. But it's not for everyone, because there are, of course, a lot of risks with being an entrepreneur and your own business owner too. Well, how wonderful. And I love the rich dad, poor dad analogy there as well. So tell us, when did speaking come into play? Obviously, I think you need to maybe tell us a little bit about the company that you started, your own business, because I'm assuming that was one of the reasons that why you speak today, or why you started speaking in the first place.
Yeah. Well, for me, I lost 3 jobs young in marriage. My poor wife had to start really worrying that we weren't going to find a way to pay the bills. So I did. These were not very illustrious careers I was starting either. So I did used car sales, and they pulled me aside one day and said, "Hey, this isn't working out. You got to go home." And they ended up closing the whole store like a month later because there wasn't it wasn't the right business model. They didn't have it right.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel that. I felt like I had failed. And I went home to my wife and told her, and that was hard. And then about a few months later, I left to go do summer sales, knocking door to door, because I had been sold this dream of making a lot of money fast, selling alarm systems for homeowners. And at the end of the summer, I had nothing to show for it but the fun memories of getting the door slammed in my face a lot. And
I'm sure.
And yeah, it was hard. And then the next summer I did, I got to a place where I needed an internship. I got an internship and I did well with it. Finally, I had found a sales job selling property management software, and that type of a B2B sale, I was pretty good at it. So they gave me a full-time job when I graduated college. This was 2008, and the U.S. was about to go through a very terrible real estate recession, which led to the stock market also crashing, and investors that had invested in this property management software company that I was working for all backed out and said, we're not putting any more money in the business. And so one day they pulled us all in a room and said, we're sorry that payroll hasn't hit this morning. That's because we have no way to meet payroll today.
Oh, wow.
But we promise you we'll try over the next couple of weeks to get everyone paid for their time, but you're welcome to go home. And so for the third time, my wife went from having a first child with me to a second with this new job. And I had to go home for the third time and say, it didn't work out. I got to find something else. That led to me.
This one was definitely out of your control. I mean, it sounds like all of them were out of your control, but it affected the whole world.
Absolutely. Looking back, though, I always took a lot of personal responsibility for what I could have done, and I think that's in my nature to be that way. But I also have given myself now, looking back, a lot of grace for that. It wasn't all my fault, but it really motivated me that if I was ever going to own my own business, there would never be a day when I couldn't make payroll. I would let someone go and tell them it's not working out before I made them work for me with no way to pay them the next 2 weeks later, Yeah. And what ended up happening was at the same time I was getting laid off from that job, my brother-in-law is a dentist, and he had 3 record-breaking months of new patients. And so rather than look for a new boss that would let me work for them, I decided to start selling the service of Google Ad Management for dentists specifically at first, using my brother-in-law as my testimonial. And it turns out I was better at selling my own services and building my own business than I was at selling anyone else's product or service or business. And we grew getfoundfirst.com. I held it from 2008 until 2015. I sold that business. And then from 2013, so before I sold that business, I started another one called Stukent.com. And Stukent, I grew as an education technology provider to support thousands of institutions in over 80 countries. We passed over 1 million students helped. And it's been really fun to watch that business continue to go and grow without me being there. And that's happened now for me twice. With getfoundfirst.com, the new owners still hold and are growing that business. And with Stukent.com, the private equity group that bought the majority ownership away from me, they are still going and growing really well with that business. And so it's now 12 years old, coming up on 13 years old. So really exciting.
That's amazing. Congratulations. And everything you did before that, no doubt, set you up to be successful in those businesses that went really well that you then went on to sell.
Yeah.
And I mean, in that era when Google Ads were new, I'm assuming, or fairly new to the market, it would have been really cutting edge. So were you being invited to come and speak about what you were doing in those businesses?
Yes. On getfoundfirst.com, the Google Ads business, I had some great speaking opportunities that came. I had to hustle for those pretty hard. Okay. I hadn't established myself yet as a true market leader, but it was a new enough space that I could speak to a CMO in his 50s when I was in my 20s, and I was looked at as the expert. And that was a real blessing of finding a new cutting edge, evolving technology and space and service that got me young and into success fast. I think there's a similar opportunity right now in AI, but by the way, but after I grew Get Found First and I had built the credibility of building and growing a successful business, then the phone started ringing for me to come and speak. For example, this one's not a true public speaking gig, but my former professor, Kent, called me and said, "Hey, Stu, I know you've been doing really well with getfoundfirst.com. I need to leave the university for 2 semesters, and I would like you to come and teach at your alma mater. Come take this class over. You've been hiring my students away from the class anyways after they graduate, so why don't you come and teach?" And I said, I don't have a master's degree. He said, "But your skills are such that you can give our students the skills we know they need, and the professors that have PhDs, they don't have this skill." And so that was a public speaking gig every day. I'm speaking to teaching 80 students and learning and growing and evolving and improving. And that led to an opportunity to co-author the textbook Digital Marketing Essentials.
Wow.
That is now the world's bestseller on digital marketing for higher ed students. And so, and Bond University, by the way, down there in Australia has used our products there. And
fantastic.
Yeah. So, Bond?
Yes. Well, I've heard of it. I haven't been there, but I have heard of it.
Yeah. So we're really proud to be impacting so many, but in the ability to impact so many and finding my way to help so many, that is what gave me the bio that got me on stages. All of a sudden, I had co-authored the bestseller on digital marketing, and professors wanted to hear me speak to them. Even though I didn't have a PhD, I was talking to professors all the time about what we did to help them teach digital marketing. And so then I was on stages frequently, and then that led to other types of stages beyond just the ones, that you would think are a direct fit with my business. So.
Okay. So let's slow this stage time down a little bit, because I'd love to hear, do you remember the first time you were asked to speak on a stage at an industry conference like you're talking about, and how you felt about that, how it went? Tell us about, did you feel nervous at all, or were you totally fine?
The first one that comes to mind is we had an opportunity to speak, both me and my co-author, on stage to a room of, in a vendor room. So we thought that because it was like an exhibit hall and there was sessions where professors were speaking, that our vendor session, speaking as the paid sales sponsor, that would lead to, 10, 15 people being in the room. But because digital marketing education was so cutting edge at the time, and because my co-author had a really good resume, everyone wanted to come to the vendor session. And so it was standing room only, and everyone was so excited to hear what we were doing and what new things we were going to bring to market that would change the way traditional marketing professors would teach digital marketing in universities. And so we had them eating out of the palm of our hand, Carmen. It was so fun because what we were talking about was new and unique and different and special. And it made up probably for my lack of skills in public speaking, that the message was such a pertinent and relevant one.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience. It wasn't one of those ones where I got on stage and was like, oh no, what am I doing? How did I get myself in this mess? I felt very confident and ready to go. Take that.
That's so good. And the event organizers would have been thinking, oh, we got this one a bit wrong. Everyone wanted to come to this little stand that we weren't when preparing for. I love that story. I think that's so cool. And that everyone was so interested. They were just standing up and gathering around, waiting to hear what you had to say.
Oh, Carmen, this kicks off another thought for me about one of the things I think a lot of public speakers miss the mark on. You have a stage that's given to you, and their audience, and you hope that their audience will be there and be excited. And I think too many don't take advantage of the opportunity to help whoever is providing the stage continue to expand their influence and who they bring to their stages. So what I mean by that is we were the greatest promoter of our vendor session where we were public speaking was us. It wasn't the American Marketing Association. It was us saying, hey, we have a session. It's this day, this time, going to be happening right here. And we have Jeff Larson with a PhD from Wharton, a top 3 business school in the U.S., as one of our presenters. And his co-author, Stuart Draper, will also be presenting. And they're going to be talking about a first in the world digital marketing simulator. See, when we promoted it like that, then we were our own biggest fans, and we were unashamed of sharing that this would be a session they would not want to miss, right? Yeah. And I think too often we just want to be given a stage and given an audience without doing our part to help people see why they want to be coming to our feet on stage. And so, yeah, for what that's worth, be thinking about what you can do to help the person that gave you a stage continue to grow the audience for their stage.
Yes, so true. I love that. It's be your own marketer, really, is what you're saying. And it's so true. And I think it's really great, especially for speakers that are starting out that might be listening right now too, because that can be the most frustrating part when you haven't got the reputation yet. You know you've got an amazing message, you know it's important for people to hear, you've put some work in and you know you're good up there, but you're just not getting the gigs, or you're not getting the eyes on you when you are getting the gigs. So here's a great example of someone that didn't have the main stage but ended up with the big audience anyway. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Have you got any memories of, that's obviously a standout that you just spoke about then. Have you got any other, in the whole time that you've been speaking up till now, any other standout talks that you want to share? And it can be standout, there might be a couple, there might be a standout because something amazing happened. It might be a standout because something didn't go the way you wanted it to. Yeah. Happy for you to share both.
Yeah. I'm happy to share and appreciate you asking. So, Carmen, I was growing Stukent. We were still small, but we were gaining traction as a education technology provider in Idaho. And the Idaho Technology Council asked me to come and speak and talk about the fundraising we had done and how the business was going so far. And I still needed to raise more money at the time. So I needed the attention of the people that were coming to the Idaho Technology Council. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what can I do to stand out? Like, education technology is not very exciting to most people. Ed tech is not a large segment of the economy in Idaho, in the state of Idaho in the United States. Boston and the Massachusetts area, very known for education, not Idaho. But anyways, I had just recently acquired one of those hoverboards that you could lean your feet forward and it would wheel you forward, you know?
I had a friend that drove one of those into a wall in his home.
Yeah, well, I had gotten really comfortable in one of those things. I would ride it around the office. We took turns and had a lot of fun with it. And I brought that thing 4 hours across the state to Boise where we had the event. And I decided that I would give my entire presentation while on the hoverboard.
So cool.
So when they called me up onto stage, I actually came from the back of the room, going around all the round tables, and I rode the hoverboard up on stage. And you know what? Everyone was like, is this guy selling hoverboards? What's going on, you know?
Yes.
But but I had everyone's undivided attention, in part because they were like, is that guy going to fall off that thing and that thing's going to come shooting off the stage? Like, but I found a way to get everyone to remember me. And I've still had people years later go, I'll never forget that day that you presented in Boise and you rode the hoverboard the whole time. Another time after Stukent had kind of made it and we'd had a payday with the private equity group buying my majority ownership, I was asked to speak at an event also for the Idaho Technology Council on this side of the state. We're close to Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park, for those that know a little bit of the geography of the United States. And when they had the event, I wanted to, again, stand out somehow. What am I going to do that's going to help me stand out? And I decided I've got some $100 bills that will get everyone's attention. So if you, this is one I hope others will take advantage of and use as a tip. I started the session with, I have 3 $100 bills here. And if you're paying close enough attention, you may have a chance and a shot at winning one of these bills. So pay attention and you may have a shot at winning one of them. I promise I will not walk out of here with these 3 bills back in my pocket. And everyone was so engaged in my session because of how I kicked it off. Yeah. And again, it wasn't directly tied to my message. I did tie it in that I said, look, we need more of this happening, this money like this changing hands in East Idaho. We need to build the economy here, and things that are holding us back are this, and this. And I suggest that we do this, and this. And then I said, okay, the first person, this was about a room of 120 people, so fairly large. I need a volunteer who's ready to share their 2 cents on this, or to remember what my second point was about the things that we need to do in East Idaho. And so, boom, the hands go up and I picked someone to share. And then at the end, I had a little extra money. And as they clapped and cheered at the end, I handed out a few extra dollar bills as I went to sit back down. Yeah. And people never forget moments like that. And they may forget how much money you gave or if they won or lost. They'll probably remember if they won, but most likely they're going to remember that Stu was the one who did that. And you become the memory, not so much the gimmick of what you did to get the attention. They remember you. And that becomes a critical part of a successful presentation, is that they remember your main message. They're not going to remember all of it. Be certain of that. They won't remember all of it, but they need to remember your main message and who you are, right? Forever. If you do those 2 things, I feel like you've won.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Listen. Everyone that's listening, that was like absolute gold. I love so many things about what you just said just then. One of the things you said was that you created a moment that people remember. And that's what we are all about at Illuminated Story. We help speakers create moments. I call them signature moments within your talk that absolutely have them remember you and most likely at least a couple of your key messages. And the other thing you said, and I can picture the hoverboard. I'm so glad you didn't fall off. So well done with that. The hoverboard and the $100 bill, you managed to tie them into your message. So it's great, and I do it myself. It can be quite cool to start with something where the audience is a bit confused and like, why the hell is he doing that up there? Or why on earth is she doing that up there? And then it unravels or it unfolds and you somehow tie it into the key message that you're giving. And that's what you did. And the other thing with the $100 bill, obviously being able to entice people to, if you listen, there's a chance you're going to win this. So you're setting yourself up for success and setting the audience up to want to listen because you've given them a really great reason other than your amazing content to want to listen to the message. So cool. Love that.
So Carmen, Tell me about the name. Here I go interviewing you. Okay, you ready for this one?
You're switching the interview. I love this.
Tell me about the name for Illuminated Story, the business that you have.
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So I thought for a very long time about what I would call my business, and I did work with a marketing company, but I always said to them, I want to help light people up from the inside, because when I was in corporate, I saw so many smart people that just couldn't articulate their message in a way that was going to inspire other people. But if I could light them up from the inside, because I also coached a lot of people just by default when I was in my leadership roles, my team especially, when they had to speak, so that they became really great speakers. And I would be working with someone that the business just didn't really see properly to begin with. And within 12 months of them being in my team, they were seen completely differently and often went on to senior management roles themselves because of how they could speak. But they always had the talent there on the inside from the beginning. It was just someone to bring it out for them. So that's why my business is called Illuminated Story, so I can help illuminate other people's stories on stage.
I love that. And I think that stories sell. And so being able to get good at telling stories and gathering everyone's attention to the story you're sharing, so that they then listen to the main key point you want to drive home about that story. People that I think a good public speaker really gets good at that. Can I share an example of how I utilized stories to help me as a public speaker?
I would love you to share. Yes, please share.
Okay. So I was growing Stukent. We had grown to about a 20-person team. This is year 2. And we had 5x the size of our revenues. It was a really good year. Wow. And I was looking for a motivational moment. Every day, our team would come up with some message. Whoever's turn it was that day would share a little motivational moment so that everyone would read it on the group chat. We used Slack. Yes. And it was fun to get to know people and share and hear what motivates them every day, and in turn it'd motivate you a little bit. Well, it was my turn. I was looking for something motivating, and I kind of liked the brand Under Armour, and I decided that it would be good to study other businesses that had meteoric success. So I found the main message of Kevin Plank of Under Armour sharing to his alma mater, University of Maryland, the experience of growing Under Armour. And as a part of his speech, he said, year 1, we did $17,000 is all. Year 2, we did $100,000. Year 3, we did $300,000. And we were coming up on the end of year 3, and I knew we were going to have a good year. We were going to do $1 million in sales. And Stukent's numbers outperformed Under Armour's numbers. And Under Armour has now become a household name, global brand. And they're at the time they had done over $1 billion in sales. And I was hearing the founder of their company share numbers that were well below how good Stukent had done in our first 3 years. So I gathered all 20 of the team members around, and I had my public speaking stage here. And I said, you guys, I believe that what Under Armour did to Nike and Adidas, it didn't kill them, but it took market share. I believe Stukent can do that to Pearson and McGraw-Hill, the 2 largest publishers in higher education. Wow. So what Under Armour is to Nike and Adidas, that's what Stukent is to Pearson and McGraw-Hill. And that story became a story that I shared over and over again. You know what? 5 years went by, Stukent was still outperforming Under Armour's numbers the first 5 years we were in business. Amazing. So I didn't, then I had an opportunity. We started a new event. I gave myself another stage. This one's called ProfCon. ProfCon, we're going to hold it in West Yellowstone, Montana. It's the gateway to Yellowstone National Park. And by the way, if you don't know what those are, you need to go on Google and search them up. Very fun places to visit in the world. Put it on your bucket list. But I get 100 professors from all over that already use our products, or they're planning to use our products, to come. And on the stage, I shared that I believed that what Under Armour was to Nike and Adidas, that's what Stukent was to Pearson and McGraw-Hill. And you know what the response was from the audience when I shared the story? Because I gave them the backstory of having heard Kevin share the story.
Yeah.
The audience erupted in cheers.
Ooh,
My
amazing.
customers were saying, yeah, go get Pearson and McGraw-Hill. They were like excited that that my business could go and do better for them than what Pearson and McGraw-Hill had previously done for them. And I got my audience to hear a story and then remember the message. Here's my favorite part of the whole story. Two soon-to-be authors for Stukent that were just customers at the time, they were doodling in the back, and they drew a fish that said Stukent inside the fish. And they drew 3 other little fish, Mick, Graw, and Hill. And they showed that to me at the end of my speech. They came over and, hey, you got to see this. And they showed me their little drawing of the big Stukent eating McGraw-Hill, which, by the way, McGraw-Hill is way bigger than Stukent still today.
Right.
But they ended up turning it into a T-shirt and shipped it out to me.
Oh, wow.
Because they were so passionate. I had got them so excited about the idea that we could go and replace and do better than the competition. So tell stories that people can relate to and get excited to cheer for you as the main character in their story that they like to see unfold. That is that was another aha moment for me in my public speaking experiences that I had of telling a story and doing it in such a way that it gets people to be excited to be a part of what you're building, both the employees and the customers.
So true. And you're right. It was about them, them being excited for themselves and being part of the movement that you created through the story that you were telling. Yeah. Incredible.
Right, yeah.
And do you know what else? This is, I guess, a bit of a side note, because I'm sure that there'll be a lot of business leaders listening as well to this episode. You created a culture in your business through that story too. And that's what storytelling can do in businesses. It creates cultures, and team members would have repeated that story to other clients and potential clients. And so a story can just drive so far. There's so much that it can do. And it doesn't feel like you're trying to convince anyone or sell to anyone when you're telling a story, even though that's exactly what you're doing sometimes. You're bringing people into your world and enrolling them in the vision that you see through telling this cool story that's so easy for people to remember. I can't believe you got a graphic drawn and a T-shirt sent to you out of that. How cool is that?
Yeah. In the book, Things a Little Bird Told Me, it's Biz Stone's little memoir on creating Twitter. He said, we knew we had made it when people had the fail whale tattooed on their leg. See, the fail whale, for those that are early days Twitter users, was like when the website got too busy with too many people using it, it would crash, and little birds were drawn on screen trying to lift a whale with strings wrapped and ropes wrapped around the whale. It was called the fail whale, and it said, "We're sorry, we're down, we'll be back up," right? And the fans were so excited about what the movement of Twitter was, the power it was giving everyone to be their own media outlet, that they were tattooing the fail whale of Twitter on their leg. And Biz Stone's like, how could we have not known that we had made it when we were seeing that? Okay, can I share one more story, Carmen?
Of course, I love your stories.
You're the queen of storytelling, and so I want to share a story and tell this story so that it helps you know so it gives you ideas as listeners of how to think about what story you could share. The name, this is a story that my sales team used over and over again.
Okay.
You may have asked yourself how to pronounce our name, Stukent, and why we came up with the name Stukent. Well, do you mind if I quickly tell you the story?
I'd love you to.
You see, Kent Lundeen He taught digital marketing at BYU Idaho in 2006 and 2007. And Stuart Draper, our founder, was one of his students. So Kent is like you. He's a professor just like you. And Stuart, he got asked 4 years later to go back by Kent. He got asked to go and teach as an adjunct faculty member. So he's also, our founder is also, he's been in your shoes and on the same stage in front of the students just like you. And they found that teaching digital marketing is really hard because the content gets outdated so fast. Textbooks and textbook publishers can't keep up. Can you relate to that story? Oh yeah, that's why we haven't even started teaching it yet. Or, oh yeah, that in telling the story that was in our name, Stukent, which plays on the name student, was really the story of Stu and Kent.
Right.
And
yes,
professors would eat that out of our hands. So the salespeople loved to over and over again share the founder's story because it led to an immediate relationship of understanding. These guys this company was built by people that have experienced what I'm experiencing. They know what I need because they've tried to use other things and they've seen the problem and they've solved it. That was how the listener of the story was thinking when we were just sharing about how the founder decided to come up with the name for the business. Yeah. So, and I told my team, I said, don't ever tire of telling the story because it's an old story for you.
Yes.
But it's a brand new story for every professor that hears it. So don't tire and keep utilizing it. And so they still, to this day, it's a 12-year-old company, and they still bring up the Stu and Kent story because it's a perfect segue into why we are the right fit to help them with better curriculum for their classroom.
Yeah, so good. And it's so true that as the speaker, you can get sick of your own stories, or you think, oh, this isn't important anymore, or they've probably heard it. Even if you're speaking to an audience that has heard it before, they've only heard it once and they're very open to hearing it again. In my experience, they want to hear it again. And sometimes they feel ripped off if you've decided to try and do something different because you think you can't tell the same story twice because they were looking forward to hearing the story from you. So yes, repeat stories. And I mean, founder stories are so important. And what I found is that the business that I worked in for many years was already large when I started, but it still had this founder or family vibe, if I can use that word, about it. And stories were repeated and we were told stories and then we owned the story and then we would repeat it out in our roles. And the business is now an extremely large corporate business. And I feel like it's lost some of that storytelling because the other thing that happened through those stories and through this amazing culture where people just felt part of the mission, people stayed for a really long time. And that's not happening as much now. So, yes, pass your stories on. I think it just makes such a big difference to your business. I've written down a note here, story you can't tell. I don't know why I've written that down.
Story you can't tell. Well, we can go a lot of directions with that.
Yeah, I know. What was I thinking? Anyway, let's park that one. So we've spoken a lot about storytelling being extremely important. And I think through your stories, you have let us know that through your speaking, great things have happened for the businesses you've been in. I think it's an incredible marketing tool. What would you say to others that are listening that maybe don't love speaking? How do you think it can help someone in their business or in their life if they know they've got a message that's important to share? What advice would you have for them to feel brave enough to start?
Well, I believe that everyone can be a successful salesperson and a successful storyteller. And if they start with getting good at telling stories, the sales can kind of follow in that. This may be where you were going with your note, Carmen.
Thanks.
If you tell a good story, you can't tell that you're being, if you're listening to a good story, you can't tell you're being sold to.
That is
and I don't know if that's where you're going with your note,
but I like that direction, and I completely agree with you.
Right? And so if you are cringing at the idea of, I don't like to sell, I don't like to be the persuasive, like try and, coerce you to believe the way I believe, that kind of feeling is like slimy, and a lot of people want to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
But if you, instead of trying to be so persuasive in just direct of buy my thing, and instead you tell the story of someone who was struggling and then used your thing, your service, your product, and was so glad they did, because then all of a sudden the listener to your story, you know what we do when we listen to stories? We try to relate with the main character. We try to put ourselves in their shoes. And so if we hear the story of someone who was struggling and hated an experience they were having, and your business provided the solution, and you do a good job of sharing that story, then they start going, I want to be like that main character. I've been struggling. I want to have this resolution that you provide, because I've heard your story and that person's story, and now I know that I can relate to that person, and I would like to have the same outcome that your main character in your story had. Does that make sense? So if you are afraid of telling stories or afraid of selling, then just tell stories,
That's amazing advice. And I think I remember years ago when I was selling on the shop floor, that's when I started at the company I've been talking about. We were selling bathroom products back then, and bathrooms became cool at a certain point in time. So the storytelling got even better, because all of a sudden it became this sanctuary in your home and the wellness area of the home and all the things. But I remember moving forward and getting promoted into a state role, and the lady I was about to work with had been doing it for a long time. And she said, we're going to teach other people how to sell. And I said, there's just one problem. I don't really know how to sell. She's like, what are you talking about? You get great sales. That's what part of the reason why you're being promoted into this role. I'm like, no, but I don't really sell. Like, I don't really know what I do, but I just sort of show people what's available and help them choose. But I'm not like, I just don't push them into anything. And she's like, that is selling, Carmen. Like, in my mind, and it's funny you said that you started in used car sales, because I always use that persona as an example of how not to sell. I'd say, the traditional persona, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that sell used cars out there that do not sell this way, is that pushy kind of person that's like, you want to buy this, you want to buy that, and it's good for them, not good for you, the buyer. And she explained to me that I was painting a vision and showing opportunity, and then letting the customer choose which one was going to be right for them. And you've obviously got to give some good information as well. So, and stories do help sell. Like, even back then, I'd say, this other customer purchased this and they said they love it because of X, Y, Z. It just sounds better, doesn't it? When it's not you saying it's good, it's someone else saying it's good. It's someone else in the story saying it's good, or how it worked well for them because of the arc of the story that you're telling. Yeah. Such great advice. Now, what's next for you? What's next moving forward with businesses and your speaking? Where do you see things going?
Well, I have been running my podcast, Startups with Stu, now for a little over a year. I just started my second season. I'm trying to get about 46 episodes done a year. That gives me 6 weeks to miss in a year's time. And so I do one episode a week. If you haven't checked out the Startups with Stu show, I'd recommend you go do that. And as a part of that, I've been hosting retreats and bringing founders together and business leaders together to talk about their businesses and to help each other, not from a perspective of selling each other so much as helping each other and understanding each other and giving each other direction and ideas that will save them time. So I tell people that if you come to one of my retreats, you're going to turn decades worth of learning into days, because you're going to get people that have been for a decade or more building and growing a business who've learned a lot. And if you go in days time, learn from them, you can save yourself a decade of everything they had to go learn over a decade by hearing what their experience was. And so I tell people too, that'll come to me, I get asked a lot, hey, will you go to lunch? Can I buy you lunch? And I'm like, tired of buying. I don't need your $6 sandwich, bro. I just don't. So thank you. But like really, if I tell people, if you want the best help from me, go and listen to 45 hours worth of content I've already pre-created. It's online if you go search Startups with Stu. So that's the main stuff I'm working on. I do have a really fun new venture I'm in the middle of building. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll be sharing more soon about some of what's next for me in my career path. But one thing's for sure, I'll never stop giving back and being a public speaker. So.
Before we finish, is there anything that you would like to share with the audience? You've given us so much gold. Any final words of wisdom that you would like to share when it comes to speaking and business?
Yeah, this is going to be a unique, probably different direction than you've seen a lot of people go. Okay. But I believe that one of the greatest speeches ever given was the speech by Jesus called the Sermon on the Mount. Okay. And when you think of the greatest speeches of all time that have been heard by the largest number of people, it has to be one of the most quoted that exists, and it has to be one of the most reused and revisited stories that's ever been told from a public speaker. Mm-hmm. And so, in all of life, whatever stages and fame and recognition you receive, I think it's important to be asking yourself that if 2,000 years have gone by, what will people still be saying about me and the stage and what I said when I was given the stage? So, I love Jesus and his message to the world, and I'm constantly trying to become more like him. And I think all of us would do better to do so. And that is, if you're going to give me my one last whatever direction I want to take, that's the way I'm going with it, Carmen.
Well, I love the message because it's so true. You really do leave a legacy through your speaking and what you say. And it is good to reflect on, what do you want that to be? What message do you want people to remember you for 2,000 years from now?
Yeah. And whether you're Christian or not, I hope as a listener you realize that the main message here that I'm sharing of Jesus is that he created a message so powerful to an audience fairly small but that message resonated so much that it still gets talked about 2,000 years. It got written down and reused for 2,000 years. So ask yourself what you're doing with your time on this earth that will leave that kind of legacy.
Well, that's a very inspiring way to end our conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so excited for this to be out in the world and for our audience to hear your amazing words of wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me, Carmen. I appreciate you.
All right, here's where you're standing. You can close this episode, think that was fun, and go back to doing things the way you've always done them. Or you can decide you're done being the speaker, the leader that people politely applaud and immediately forget. If you want to create the kind of moments we talked about today, the theatrical, the unforgettable, the profitable, I've put together something that'll change how you think about the stage forever. It's called Beyond the Keynote, Creating Your Illuminated Story. No fluff, no theory, just methodology I use with elite speakers and leaders who are done playing small. Go to illuminatedstory.com/masterclass. And hey, if this episode hit you somewhere, share it, leave a review. It takes 30 seconds and helps more people discover that great speaking isn't magic. It's a game and you can learn to win it. I'm Carmen Sederino. Don't just speak, illuminate. See you next week.